And they give you something that's called Kindergeld every month. So for every kid that you have, every kid that you knock out,
you get money.
You get money. It's like the lottery. Like, of course, you do have a human life that you have to take care of for the next 20 years, but you get Kindergeld for it. Amazing. It's the Germany Experience, the podcast about life in Germany as seen through the eyes of outsiders. Go to thegermanyexperience.de for all kinds of information about the podcasts and new episodes in your feeds every Monday, so subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm your host, Sean, and it's good to be back. I took a little bit of a longer break than I expected, but now I'm back, and I have new episodes for 2021. And my first episode back is a look at the cost of living in Germany. And to do it, I wanted to discuss real-life examples with someone. And that's exactly what I got from Jen of simplegermany.com. She wrote a blog post called Cost of Living in Germany, a real-life case study. Perfect. And so I invited her on the show to discuss the post. And I'll get to our discussion in a bit. But I just wanted to mention that if you don't know simplegermany.com, you need to check it out. Jen started it with her wife last year, and they have put loads of content online that is useful for people who are moving to Germany or people already here. I'll just read to you some of what they've got on their website. So on simplegermany.com, I'm looking at the menu and there's Germany 101. And under that, they've got moving to Germany, living to Germany, driving in Germany, culture in Germany, family in Germany. And then they've got services in Germany where they talk about insurance and banking and internet and taxes and much more. I haven't even gone through the whole list. And more recently, they also started their own YouTube channel, Simple Germany, and I've linked to the show in the show notes. So do check them out and do check their YouTube channel out. Now, onto our conversation that we had. Jen is originally from Guatemala, and in our discussion, we get into her and her wife's expenses, just as an example of what typical costs in Germany are. We talk about rent, we talk about mobile contracts, insurance, taxes, and more. But our discussion was so much more than just costs in Germany. It's also a glimpse into everyday life here. And it's also partly Jen's story, of course. So here is Jen from Simple Germany. Welcome to the show, Jen.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, Sean. I'm very excited to be here.
And I'm excited to have you. You wrote a very comprehensive blog post about the cost of living in Germany. And this is actually something that I've wanted to do on this podcast for a long time, is just talk about the cost of living, because it's actually something that comes up with people that I speak to. People get in touch with me and they ask me questions in this line. So I've wanted to do this for a while. And your article is so good and covers so many aspects of it that I just thought that it would be great if we could, talk through that. But before we get to that, and before we get to the website, simplegermany.com, maybe give me a bit of your background, where you're from, and how you ended up in Germany.
Okay, that's a very, very long story. I mean, we could spend the whole podcast episode just talking about that. However,
oh boy, Ooh, look at the time. All right,
well,
now that's
okay,
it,
we're
folks.
done. That's it. That's my story. Yeah, so I was born and raised in Guatemala. I lived there until I was maybe around 20, 21. I'm bad with numbers, so figure that out, which is funny for cost of living in Germany. But first move I actually made was from Guatemala to Budapest. I did an internship through a program called ISEC. And I was supposed to teach tourism and English in Budapest. That was supposed to be 8 months. I ended living there for about 2 years.
Right.
Then it was like extremely cold. I couldn't handle the cold anymore.
Really? In Budapest?
Yeah.
I've only been there in summer, so I can't.
Who would go to Budapest in winter, right? Like,
Yeah,
I don't know,
right.
but like it's it's pretty cold. It gets pretty cold. Yeah. So then I was looking for jobs, especially in Germany, because I've heard so many good things about Germany. Yeah. And I found a job and I moved here in 2012. So I came to Germany and it was about like 2 years in when I was like, okay, I'm ready to go home. You know, okay. I'll pack my bags. Like, you know, it's enough. Yeah. And then I met my now wife, and now it's 8 years later. So I'm still here.
Well, look at that. That's amazing. So what was it that made you feel like you were ready to go after 2 years or to throw in the towel?
To be honest, it was like hard, like at this, like as an expat, I think you probably also relate to this, right? Like you make a lot of good friends, you have an awesome 1 or 2 years, and then suddenly people start saying goodbye, and then everybody just leaves, and then it's like, okay, I have to start all over again and all over again. So at this point, it was 4 years in Europe, and I had already lost, like, let's say 3 batches of friends. I hadn't really met anyone, like how to say, like with a, how do you call it? Like a girlfriend, really worthwhile pursuing. Right. So I thought like my adventures here were done, you know, and I was like, okay, I'll go home. You know, I know at least how things work there as well. Yeah. All right. Yeah. And I have childhood friends in Guatemala, right? So it's a lot easier also to meet people. Right. But like I said, life just happened another way.
Okay, so and then you ended up staying here, and like you said, you've been here for 8 years now. So how are you feeling about Germany now after all that time?
Wow, I love it. I mean, there's always something. As a good German, you always complain about 1 or 2 things every day.
You are integrated,
right? There you go. However, in the big scope of things, I love it here. I love the quality of life. I love how things just work. I love a lot of things of it. Not everything is perfect. Obviously, there's a lot of things that could be that are different than my home country. Yeah. However, in the general sense of it, I really enjoy my time here, except for the weather. That could change. Yeah.
So your wife is German?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And I guess that has a lot to do with making you feel settled as well in a place when you as previous guests have said about a similar situation, is that they suddenly have a connection to the place, whereas before there was no specific connection. Now you do have a connection. So was it something like that as well for you?
Yes, I totally agree, especially because you get also the opportunity to have Christmases together and Easters and with the extended family, and you really get to see the culture firsthand, right? Yeah. So I totally agree with that. Without her, I would totally feel like a complete stranger still, I think. Right. Not a complete stranger, but, you know, more strange to the culture.
You never know what path your life would have taken, but it's definitely made it easier and quicker integrating when there's that
definitely connection.
Yeah.
And also it's so easy, like you see something weird and you have someone directly to ask about it, and then they give you their point of view. Yeah.
That is useful. That is very useful. Otherwise you just spend years wondering what on earth.
Yeah, like why does it work this way, right?
And so you're happy, you would say, mostly
very happy, yes.
In Germany.
Yeah.
So now, one of the things that you've done, and I don't know how new this is because I didn't know about this website until you contacted me, and I think you co-founded simplegermany.com.
Yes.
Yeah. So
my wife, yeah.
Simple Germany, you and your wife founded simplegermany.com. So tell me a bit about what the site is about and why you started it.
Yeah. So the site is to help expats pretty much like settle smoothly in Germany. There's a lot of bureaucracy. Germany, I think I don't know other countries, but Germans love bureaucracy. And there's a lot of things that I went through. Like, dude, it took me 45 minutes on a lunch break to open my first bank account, which was crazy. Yes. And then when I wanted to go back to do something, it's closed because we only open from like Monday to like Friday, and then Thursdays were closed, and then like some weird opening hours, right? And then online banking back in the day was not even a real thing. It was a struggle at first. Yeah. So after so many years, I worked in a company where there's a lot of international people. And I realized that the new expats would come to me and ask me for like advice. Right. Like one colleague, like even like, super worried, looked at me and was like, yo, I really need to talk to you. It's super serious. I'm like, yo, what happened? Right. How many insurances do I really need in Germany? And I was like, what? Because like my bank person is telling me that I need all these insurances, and I don't know if they're trying to scare me or I really need them. Like, what's the cultural thing here? So a few of those moments happened, and I thought, well, like, how cool would it be if there's just a resource out there to help answer all these questions? Yeah. And especially having, like we mentioned, like a firsthand kind of like knowledge base with my German wife. We kind of have like both to the story. So we decided to make Simple Germany happen. Okay. Yeah, to help expats settle in Germany easily.
All right. So the reason that I wanted to get you on the show specifically to talk about something was this cost of life, a cost of living in Germany. And like I said, like the other posts that you have on simplegermany.com, it's very comprehensive and it covers a lot of aspects. And what I liked about what you did was you wrote generally about the cost of living. And I think that you also quoted, what was this website, which I also didn't know about? It was called
Numbeo. Yeah. Pretty cool website. Yeah.
That is a very cool website. I didn't know it exists. So I think you got a lot of some of your figures from there and some of your figures from your own example for the article. So that's one thing. I'll put a link to the show notes, of course, to Jen's article on super simple
German. That would be even better. Yeah.
I'm gonna start that. I'm starting that website. Mine. Simplegermany.com. Yeah, so I'll put the link to the show notes to simplegermany.com and to this Numbeo website, which was very cool. You can give in the city that you're living in, and it can give you the expected cost of a Big Mac meal, going out, traveling on the transport. That was very cool.
It's pretty nice.
But what I liked about you, as I said, is you used your situation as an example. So let's get into it, Jen. Let's talk about this article that you wrote. And off the bat, you say that for two people, you can expect to have a cost of living of around 1,000 to 2,000 euros. That's what you basically say. But before we get into the details of that calculation and what it's comprised of, just a note, and I think a bit of a caveat here, is that, of course, this is going to be different for everybody, right? Obviously.
Right. Yeah. Definitely. Yes. Yeah. Cost of living is highly dependent on your style, like lifestyle, right?
Yeah. So as you say in the article, do your own research. So the discussion that we're going to have here is just a guide based on the numbers that you have in the article and also your own experiences. And so maybe just give us the basics of your specific situation, like which city we're talking about for you specifically, and and just a little bit about your life, whether you have kids, whether you don't have kids, and so on.
Definitely. So we live in Düsseldorf. Düsseldorf is, I would say it's a middle-sized city in Germany. It's definitely smaller than Cologne, definitely smaller than Berlin.
Right.
We live in a very, I would say it's a very nice neighborhood. The thing is that our apartment, it's on the 6th floor without an elevator. It's close to a train station. So therefore the rent is pretty low because we have to, it's really 98 steps from the door till my couch. I made that calculation once.
So you earned that couch.
I earned that couch. When I get home, I earn that couch. We don't have kids. We don't own a car. So we actually move mainly with a bike, also in winter, also when it's raining. Okay, if it's like a hailstorm, we don't take the bikes, obviously.
Sure.
However, our main means of transportation is a bike. However, Düsseldorf, as any or most German cities, is very walkable as well. So also walking is an option.
Yeah.
And what else? Insurances definitely is calculated in the cost as well. This includes like personal liability insurance, which is a definite, I would say, must for, I would say 83% of Germans alone have personal liability insurance. So that indicates the amount of people that have it. Yeah. We also have like some other insurances for the bikes and home contents and stuff like that.
Right.
And what else? I think that's pretty well. Groceries, obviously, right? Yeah. And that really depends on your diet, what kind of food you eat, where do you go shopping as well, because you have the cheap supermarkets and the super expensive ones.
And we'll get to all this stuff. And something you said as well that's left out of the calculations is things like Netflix, Amazon Prime, and I guess that like other luxuries like that. So that's not part of that. And like you said, it depends on your lifestyle. Like
definitely,
yeah. So let's get into the what's making up that cost, the meat. Yeah. So the first one that you listed in the article is of course rental costs. And so as you said, you're living in the city, outside of the city, away a bit away from city center, right? And
well, I would say it's relatively close to the city center. Okay. It's a 20-minute walk from the city center. Okay. It's a roughly 10-12 minute cycle to the city. Yeah, so it's not outside of the city center. Okay, I would say it's relatively close.
Pretty not Innenstadt, but pretty close to the center of the city.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, which is also a big deal when it comes to rent. The location that you have was whether you want to live right in the middle of the city or if you want to live a little bit outside of the Innenstadt or even further out maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely. Yeah. The further away you live from the city center, obviously it's going to be cheaper. Yeah. Again, it also depends, right? Are you looking for a house that has maybe 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms and stuff like that? Or are you looking for a shared apartment and you're just happy with a room and a shared kitchen, shared bathroom?
Yeah. So yeah, if you want to pay less, you have to make a few compromises. And I guess was it a compromise for you guys to, for example, have no elevator and no balcony?
So that is a very good question, because I actually moved in with my now current wife. So she actually found the apartment when she was single.
Oh, right.
And she actually found it because she had a job interview like around the corner from here. So on the same day, she got the job and the apartment, which is like really rare in Germany to get an apartment like on the same day.
What a day. Yeah. What a day. That's a day you come home feeling like a winner.
Right. And then it was a no-brainer when I moved in. It's 47 square meters. We don't have a balcony, and sometimes I miss it. I miss having a balcony, right? However, it's been okay. I mean, it's again the compromise that we want to save money in rent to be able to travel more and spend more money on the things that matter to us most.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the big thing, is that you have to know what your compromises are. For us, we lived in the city center of Würzburg for many years, and there it was also, for us, it was not a compromise. We one of our criteria was that we had to have a balcony, because we had at that point a small kid, and if we were going to live in an apartment block, we need some kind of place that he could get
outdoor
out,
space,
outdoor space, other than going downstairs and stuff, but all of that affects the cost, of course. So now, on one of the things you quoted in your article, you had a Numbeo stat here that the average rental for all of Germany, so the whole of Germany, not taking into account where you are, the average is for a 1-bedroom apartment in city center, you're going to pay average 750 euros. Obviously, this vastly depends on which city you're in and where
Exactly.
You're. Yeah. And then 1-bedroom outside of the city center is 570 euros on average a month.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's what you said you pay, right? What are you guys paying for?
Yes. So we pay 570 euros. And this is warm rent, which is called in Germany, which includes already electricity. Did I include in this the famous TV? I don't think I included the famous TV cost.
Not in this, but I think we're going to talk about it a little later on.
Yeah, so it's not part of this. Yeah, that's right. So it's 570 euros, which is, if you split that in two, that's like really cheap. You could pay easily 570 euros in a shared apartment in Berlin, for example, as well.
Yeah.
It's
I think that's a good price that you guys are paying for the kind of location that you have and the situation. Yeah, it seems like a good price.
It is a good price. However, like we talked, there are compromises. Like, for example, this apartment is, I don't know if you see, like there's like wood behind me. So it used to be an attic, and they converted it into a flat. So, and I think it's pretty old, maybe 20 plus years. Okay. And insulation wise is not the best. Sometimes in winter, if you put your hand close to the window, you can kind of feel some cold breeze coming in. Yeah. Like I mentioned, it's on the 6th floor. There's no elevator, right? We're close to a train station. Okay. So there are certain things that it's not for everyone. Yeah. Not everyone would enjoy living here, right?
Sure. And I think of things like when I was in Würzburg in the Innenstadt. So there we paid about, I think it was about 800 euros warm. But we lived in the Innenstadt, and we had a balcony, so that was that was cool, our criteria. But what happened was, because we lived in the Innenstadt, we lived right across the road from like a nightclub, a very very trendy nightclub in Würzburg, and we lived right next to the tram line. So every 10 minutes we had trams going past, and every Saturday morning at 3:00 there were drunk Germans outside on the street singing, coming out of the club. So, but for us it was fine as well. Like that, it's all about the sacrifices that you're wanting to make. Like for us, it was a balcony we needed to have, but it was okay that we lived on such a noisy street. And for you, it's okay not to have a balcony. So all of these things, of course, impact the costs.
Like we have a friend, and they live close to the train station in Düsseldorf. So I don't know if it's a European thing, but definitely it's a German thing, that areas close to the train station are a little bit shadier than the rest of the city. Yeah. So the street is pretty shady. What I mean by shady, there's like homeless people and it's just shady, right? Yeah. However, they found an apartment for 120 square meters, I think, and they pay, I think, 1,100 euros. And they have like 2 big balconies. It's like a really massive apartment. It's beautiful. However, the cheap, let's say, like rent is due to the fact that the area is not so nice. Okay. However, when you walk in, it's pretty awesome. Yeah, it's pretty nice.
And it's close to the train station, so you don't have to deal with that area for too long. You can pretty much just go straight to town. But yeah, it comes exactly that. That's and the second place we had in Würzburg was a very nice place. It was on the ninth floor of an apartment building with an elevator.
Nice.
Yeah, but we paid for that. So that was the thing. So I think paying warm, it was about 100 square meters as well. So it was pretty big. And we were paying warm, I think close to 1,200 euros.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
So it was pretty expensive. And the other thing was that rent went up, I think, by 6% every year or 7%. So that's something else that people need to be aware of when they're signing the contract. There's a lot of contracts say that this is your rent price, but after the first 2 years, it's going to go up by this, and then it's going to go up by every year. I don't know how often that is, but that was definitely the case in the rental contract that I had.
Makes sense. I think for newer apartments, it totally, I've heard that rent increases. I think there's a capped amount that you cannot increase it. Like they cannot increase it by like 30% or some crazy number like that. It has to be agreed upon before. Luckily, our landlord has not increased the rent for our apartment. So that's pretty cool. However, I think she hasn't done it as well because, like, as I mentioned, there's a few things, that don't work super great. Yeah. Which we don't complain about. So it's like kind of like we're both okay with the fact of, paying the same money, but we just don't complain too much about the things that could be improved. Yeah.
That's not very German of you.
That is not very, that's
not very German.
I should have written a letter.
I should have written a passive aggressive letter. What is, come on. How long have you been here? I'm disappointed.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? You don't want to poke the bear, man. You sometimes just don't want to poke the bear.
And that's the thing. That's we also, my wife and I, but we come from South Africa, and it's also a very similar thing where South Africans are very polite, and we don't like confrontation very much. Like we go out of our way to avoid confrontation, which is also not very German. So we also tend to put up with a lot more. Rather than complain about things. So, yeah.
No, Germans don't. Like my in-laws, they have a very, very, very nice neighbor. I mean that very sarcastically. The other day we had, because they have like a very beautiful garden, and we were having a small, they have a fireplace in the garden, and we had the fire on normal, it's a summer night. Yeah. The next morning we get a written letter from the neighbor explaining how the smoke had totally pretty much screwed up his evening because it went into the house and they needed to wait for hours until the smoke cleared away. Very exaggerated, I must say. And pretty much they wanted to confirm, like they wanted us to reply in a letter way, as for like written form, that we wouldn't do that again after 10 p.m., right? Because 10 p.m. is, you can't. And we were there until like 9:30, which is super weird. Anyway, so we received a super passive-aggressive letter. It happens.
You haven't arrived in Germany until you've received your first angry letter from a neighbor. So that's totally how you know it's like. Yeah. So some other monthly costs that are associated with renting an apartment is things like utilities. We spoke about warm meter. So if you're paying warm, you're getting some things included in the rental price. And then there's also something called kalt meter. That's when the price is literally just the rental place, and you have to pay for water and electricity and heating and so on,
and maintenance, or like the cleaning of the building, right?
And the cleaning of the building, that's. But most of the time, I think that the prices that you see for places that you rent are warm. They're the warm meter.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, as you said, then other costs come that you can consider as part of your rental agreement. But I mean, it's not part of the rental contract, but if you're renting a house, you will then have to pay for separate things like internet. Okay. So the cost of the internet connection. So what is the cost of your internet connection, more or less?
So we pay, I think it's pretty expensive. It's 35 euros a month for internet connection. And I would say it's not even like I mean, it's an okay internet connection. It's not the fastest, right? Mm-hmm. And the thing is that once you get internet connection in Germany, like, don't change. It is such a complicated process.
Yeah.
So we used to have Unity Media before, and then we changed to Vodafone.
Right.
And that took like a month. And then funny enough, Vodafone bought Unity Media. So we should have stayed with Unity Media to begin with, because,
Oh, if you just waited a few months, could have saved yourself all that bureaucracy.
Yeah, seriously. So in general, we pay 35 euros for a contract. However, obviously, and internet, I think, is kind of like an interesting topic in Germany, because also the infrastructure for internet is not the same in every city.
Yeah.
So sometimes you might find that you get like fiber, fiber internet, fiber cable.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to pay for them to build it. And there's the option for you to do it. Sometimes you get very slow internet. So they might actually promote the fact that you get super fast internet for, let's say, 50 euros a month. However, your building doesn't support the cable system. So you're paying 50 euros for pretty much something that you could pay 20 or 35 euros for.
Exactly. That is something I've never seen internet speeds for what I'm paying for. So like if you're paying for a 50 megabits line, I've never seen that speed. It's always around half or even less than half of that. And it's especially, like you say, in the big apartment buildings, because I think that they've got limited bandwidth coming into the place through the cables and so on. So the best is just to look for a decent priced internet connection and just know that you're not going to be getting the fastest. But it is generally stable. So that's I think what's more important to me is it's nice to have faster internet, but it's also good if it's stable.
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
Yeah. And then of course there's electricity costs.
That's correct. Yeah. And electricity normally, I would dare to say most of Germany, electricity is rarely included in the warm and in the warm cost of a rental, because you have the right to choose which electricity company you wanna take.
Yeah.
So how much do we pay for electricity? We pay 60 euros a month for electricity. That's correct.
Yeah. And you can expect to pay, according to what you wrote in your article, between 50 and 150 euros a month. And I think that's fair. We pay a lot a month, but we have like 3 kids and a house now. And so we're closer to like the over 100 euros a month. It can get pretty pricey here.
It can get pretty. Do you get money back at the end of the year?
Not really. I think we kind of break even. So maybe you want to explain that as well, because that's quite a common practice here in Germany.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So electricity and utilities. So at the end of the year, you like all the. So again, bureaucracy, right? So you get a fixed amount that you pay per month. And you have to pay it, yes or yes. And at the end of the year, they kind of do a balance sheet and they say, okay, you overpaid,
right,
or you underpaid. That's could also happen.
Yeah.
And so they send you another like invoice saying, if you underpaid, you owe us this much. Yeah. And then you can adjust the monthly payments for next year. Or if you overpaid, you get money back.
That's right.
Yeah. So you never know if you're actually paying what you actually used, or, you find out at the end of the year, really, how much it is. Yeah.
It's interesting the way that they do it.
However, a note on electricity, sorry to interrupt, is that if you so it's pretty easy to change electricity, funny enough, provider. And a lot of these companies, what they do is that they tell you, okay, if you change with us, we'll give you some sort of either money back or cheaper per month price. So a lot of Germans, or us included, we change every so often electricity providers because it's more convenient and it gets cheaper by changing than remaining like the whole time with one provider.
Right. Interesting enough, just as a side note, on a few episodes ago, I had Patrick Niedermeyer on talking about climate change. And one of the things he said is that people can do also from a more eco-friendly point of view is look out for green energy. So a lot of energy providers also provide that. And that's, I think, sometimes a little more expensive. But if you want to have a good conscience, then that's something that you can do, which is something that we're going to consider doing as well here. Yeah.
However, I think even these green energy providers, they give you incentives to transfer over with them.
They do, yeah. They do. It's usually
we have green energy providers.
Oh, look at you guys! My wife there, Look at you. Are you getting it in from your wife? She's telling you that. Okay.
Because she's the one that did the swap.
All right. So you are already on the green energy train. That's very.
We are, yeah. And it's not that much different. Like I said, I think we're actually saving money per month because of that we changed this year to them. Okay, so cool. So clean conscience and saving money. Yes. How about that?
Yeah. Look at that. Win-win. Win-win. Something that's not win-win is the Rundfunkbeitrag. So that is.
Oh my God! Yeah,
that is something that's a surprise to Germans when they first get there. It was a surprise for me because we also in South Africa had a TV license kind of thing. But if you didn't have a TV, you didn't pay a TV license. It was when you bought a TV, you had to buy a TV license. In Germany, that is not the case. You pay Rundfunkbeitrag whether you don't listen to the radio, whether you don't watch the TV, you don't even have a TV. They don't care. You got to pay it.
Yeah, exactly. So you get the invoice every quarter. And every month is 17.50. And at the beginning, I was so confused. Again, this confusion of like, you get this letter, you don't know what to do with it. So you find someone that, like a colleague or someone that speaks German, and like, yo, what is this? I'm like, oh, you need to pay. For what? And then they explain the concept is like a TV. You're pretty much financing the public TV and radio stations for them to have less ads, I would say. And like, yo, but I don't watch any German TV or listen to
I don't even understand German in the beginning. Like, what am I paying for?
But you have to. And then the argument was like, yeah, but do you have a computer? Yes. Yeah. So through the internet, you could connect to one of these. Oh my God. Okay. Seriously. So there's no way around it. You just have to pay it.
Yeah. And it goes to, like you said, it goes towards the radio stations, the TV stations to keep them operating. And then there's also other things like sponsoring audio dramas, for God's sake. Like,
really?
Yes,
oh, wow.
it goes to some kind of order. I don't know. I don't even know. You just have to pay it. Who cares what it's for? Because you don't have a choice.
However, sometimes while I'm watching, it happens very, very rarely that I watch German TV, and then it's like, seriously, that's what I'm paying for?
Like, this is it? Exactly.
Like, this is it.
this is where and €17.50 is a lot of money. Like there's like I don't even pay that much for Netflix.
Yeah, exactly. So you see, and then like, I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. But there's just no way around that. It's I've got so many discussions. Like I've always like my first years, I'm like, but why?
Yeah. I don't.
Then I just stopped asking.
Yeah,
like whatever, take my money.
I didn't. I thought we had it wrong when we heard about that, because I thought we've misunderstood something. Yeah, it cannot be €17.50. I think back when I arrived, it was maybe €14 or €15 or something like that. I don't know.
So they have increased it. Yeah, definitely.
It's increased. So that's very.
Although on a side note, if you are sharing an apartment with friends or other people, it's $17.50 per house, right? So it's not per person. It is per house.
Right. Yeah. So that's where having roommates or living together with people is
beneficial.
Yeah. And then there's also, of course, when it comes to rental, it's one-time costs. So that you've got the deposit Normalerweise.
Wow. Here you go. The German in you.
It just comes into my brain. You got the deposit, which is called Kaution.
Yes. So the deposit, which is I think pretty standard practice everywhere, I would say. However, here you can pay a maximum of 3 months in advance for the deposit.
Yeah.
And that is it's like your monthly rent times the months that the landlord asks you to pay.
Exactly.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right.
And I've changed apartments how many times? 1, 2, 3. I've moved about 5 times in Germany, and I've always gotten the full deposit back, because it's supposed to pay for if you damage something, or if you leave the apartment and it's in a state where they have to do major repairs and whatever, then they take it out of your deposit, and then you get whatever's left, if there's anything left. I've never had a situation where I didn't get the full deposit back. So
that means you are a good renter.
Oh, we're very good. Which is amazing, because we had kids for some of that rental time. So
oh wow, so that's good. So that's really good. Yeah. Generally, However, I haven't heard of friends that haven't gotten the deposit back.
Yeah, and I think
you get it back.
And I think it's very strict in Germany for them to be able to take money out of that deposit to pay for something. They have to have very solid grounds, and it has to meet certain criteria. So it's very renter friendly, you could say.
Yeah, that I agree. Yeah, totally.
Then some other one-time costs, of course, not associated with the rent itself, is you got to get furniture. So if you're getting your first apartment in Germany, you're looking at furniture. So there's quite a investment there. And then maybe you want to tell us about
favorite topic.
Maybe you want to tell us about the kitchen.
The kitchen. That is like one of the weirdest things that it's so weird. So even when you're looking for apartments to rent and you look at pictures, there is no furniture. You get that, right? Okay, I need to buy furniture. And then you see a kitchen, right? And you're like, cool. However, when you go to see it, or when you want to like actually rent it, they're like, oh yeah, but it doesn't come with the kitchen.
Yeah.
But I just saw pictures that had the kitchen in there.
Yes. And what kind of place doesn't come with a kitchen? Because in South Africa, it's not even a thought. Like the kitchen is always there.
Like that is the one thing that it's always there, right? Yeah. Oh no, the previous owner's just going to rip everything apart and take it with them. And where are they going to take it? To their new apartment? What?
It is quite something. It is. It just. As a new person, we went to go see an apartment in our early days when we got here. We stayed in an apartment that we were put up by the company of my wife, because we moved here for her job, and then we went to go see an apartment, and we walked through the place and then we came to the kitchen and it was literally a cave, like just a hole in the. It was a room with concrete.
Like, where is this?
And yeah, I'm like, what do you? This is the kitchen? What do you mean? And then I realized you have to buy the whole kitchen. And I can tell you, it's not very efficient for such an efficient country, for such an efficient culture. It's not efficient because when you move, you almost never. So you theoretically have to move with your kitchen. So if you move to a new apartment, you have to take your kitchen with you and put it in the new place. But it will never fit those dimensions exactly. Like you will never. Like why Germans who are efficient?
I don't know. I've asked my wife every time, like, why? And she's just like, it's just, I don't know. It's just the way it works. However, sometimes you can buy the kitchen from the previous renter, right? So if you're lucky enough, they will sell it to you and then you can buy it. Yeah. But if not, you have to buy the kitchen all over again.
Yeah. And if you don't like it, then they have to take the kitchen out and then you have to go and buy a kitchen
which is crazy.
Oh my God. And when we moved in apartments in Würzburg at the time, we didn't have a kitchen for 2 months because we moved in and then we had to take all the measurements and figure it out. So we were living, we did it when we knew that we were going to get the place, but then we moved in and we had a 2-month period where we were waiting for our kitchen. And I can tell you, living without a kitchen with a small child is not fun.
Oh, I can imagine. That's another one. Yes. A lot of people are like, oh, I totally moved into my apartment. Oh, home warming party. No, I'm waiting for the kitchen. And it's going to take between 2 and 3 months until it gets delivered.
It's very common. Very common. Okay. So that covers, I think, the biggest cost when it comes to your living costs in Germany is that you're going to have to, and what I can do is, what I can say as well from my side is we rented for a long time and now we've bought a house in 2017. We bought a house. And so now I can compare my costs to renting and it's definitely more expensive. When you rent, someone else is going to pay the cost if something breaks down. So if the heating equipment breaks down or if the internet line doesn't work or if something like that, something happens, the landlord or the owner of the apartment has to pay for the repairs. You don't pay.
Yeah.
So that's part of the benefits of renting. When you purchase a house, you're not only paying your monthly amount to the bank for the loan that you took out that you're going to be paying off for the next 600 years, but you're also
600 years.
Yeah,
that's an expensive house.
I've sold my soul for this house. But you're also going to be paying for all of the extra stuff like the garbage collection, which is usually included in your warm rent.
True.
You're paying for everything, and it amounts up. So it's not maybe the best financial plan to buy a house, except that it's a long-term investment. So after you finish paying it off in 20, 30 years or whatever, it's yours and you now have
it evens out.
Property.
So then you would say then having a house is definitely more expensive than renting an apartment.
I think the calculations over the same amount of people. When we were thinking about it, I looked at the calculations over a 30-year period for a 30-year mortgage or for a 30-year rental, and it wasn't that much. But buying a house was more expensive in the long run. But as I said, like once you've paid your house off, you've got an asset. Like it's
exactly.
You have a house and that's something. So yeah,
definitely.
But for most expats or people coming to Germany temporarily, rental is pretty much what they're going to be.
Makes most sense.
Yeah,
I agree.
All right. So the next thing on your list of living costs was mobile phone plan, and this is quite an important one as well.
Yeah. Oh, that one's fun as well. So I think that there's been a lot of services popping up for making our life as expats easier in Germany. However, everything that has to do with mobile phone contracts and internet, there has not been really a revolution. I think it's because also how the industry works, right? Yeah. It's very also very bureaucratic, very old school kind of industry. So we have pretty much the bigger players, which they always are similar in prices and offerings. Yeah. So you could either go with a prepaid card or with a mobile contract. To be honest, when I first got to Europe in general, I went with a mobile contract. I didn't think about it. I just did it. I moved to Germany. I also got a mobile contract, so I pay every month for that. However, we needed to set up the phone for Yvonne, because she left work. she switched jobs, and then she had to give her phone back, and then she didn't have a mobile contract. And we looked into prepaid cards, and then they're so much cheaper with so much gigabytes in it. And then I'm like, why am I paying for a mobile contract? Like,
yeah, I think for a lot of people, the prepaid option is actually a good option, because you know you know what you're paying, and it's generally cheaper than the postpaid plans.
Yeah. So I pay a month 28 euros roughly for, and I believe now, because I've been with Vodafone as the provider that I have, I've been there since the beginning.
Yeah.
And actually once I threatened to leave, and they're like, what do you want? And I'm like, well, I want a cheaper contract. Sure, you'll have discounts. So I think because I have discounts, and I don't know, they've adjusted my price and increased my gigabytes. I pay 28 euros for, I think it's 10 gigabytes a month or something like this. Which is more than enough.
I'll tell you what you said. You are paying...
I pay
20 euros for 18 gigabytes a month.
18 is what I got. Yeah, because I got the 10 extra.
18 gigabytes a month. That is really 20 euros for 18 gigabytes is really good.
Yeah,
that's not really good. That's not going to be the norm that especially new expats are going to be looking at. You generally, I think for a decent gigabytes per month, postpaid, you're going to be looking at something like 30 to 40 euros.
Yeah.
And in fact, as you said in your article, the average is going to be between 40 and 70 euros. Depending on what kind of data you're getting a month. For me, for example, I would burn through anything less than 10 gigabytes before the month is up. So I need...
Oh, wow. So you need a lot of gigabytes, right?
I do. And I think I've also got something similar to 15 or 18 gigabytes for exactly the same reason you do. I've been here for a longer time. I've been with one provider, and I also was thinking of canceling it. And they also offered me like whatever to stay. Like they gave me extra data, which was a really good deal. But
so if you stay here after, I say 2 years, threaten your mobile provider that you're leaving, and then you get a good deal.
Yeah, it's almost like expected. It's almost like some countries you go to and it's expected that you would negotiate and barter. In Germany, it's expected on a mobile contract that you will tell them at some point that you're leaving them, and they will give you some kind of deal to stay. So just do that. That's an insider tip, folks.
Insider tip right there.
Yeah. Another thing that I can say that worked out well for me is in the beginning, I was paying a contract. So the way that they structure some contracts is that you pay for your phone as well. So you get the latest iPhone or the latest Samsung or whatever. Then you pay more a month than you would have, because you're paying off over 2 years that phone. And then after 2 years, it's paid off. But you would still, your contract stays the same. I think you can change maybe to a lesser a contract if you wanted that, but with many providers. But generally, then you get a new phone, and then so it carries on. So every 2 years, you're getting a new phone. And what I did was I restructured a few years ago, about 6 years ago. I said, no, I don't. I will buy the phone separately, and I will just pay for the contract, which was a great thing that I did, because then I kept my phone for 4 years, or I used it for 4 years. And a phone can keep going for these days. The phones are pretty good after 4 years still when it comes to things like memory and handling websites and everything that you do like that. The only thing is, after 4 years, the reason I changed my phone was then the battery life was pretty much gone. So,
dead. Yeah.
So then it's time to change. But generally, I think that's a better way of doing it, because then you pay once for a phone, you can keep it for as long as you want, and your contract is separate to that.
Yeah, I agree. So my 28 euros that I pay for the mobile contract is because I stopped paying for my phone as well.
Yeah.
So I already pay for that. Otherwise, I think it's another 20 euros on top for the monthly payment for the new phone. So that would easily be 48 euros. And funnily enough, some mobile providers, if you don't tell them that you're done paying your phone, they will keep on charging until you realize that you're actually overpaying for
the contract
for a phone
change.
that you already paid.
Yeah, the contract
exactly. You have to actually be very aware.
And that's a very good tip. So after your 2 year period is up, go and either get a new phone or see what your options are for staying, because like you said, that auto renews it at a certain point, and then you're stuck with that new
exactly.
cost.
Yeah.
Sneaky Germany.
Sneaky, I'm telling you, yeah.
Okay, so that's the mobile phone plan, and all of this, as I said, is in Jen's article as well. She's covered a lot of these points, so you can go and check that out. Then the other thing that you're going to have to consider is transportation. So
definitely,
and obviously the most common is probably public transportation for most people.
Yeah. So public transportation in Germany is really good.
Yeah.
The Germans love to complain about the public transportation because they say it's not as good as the Swiss, for example. However, if you compare it to the Guatemalan one, which is almost non-existent, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And South Africa, also non-existent. Awesome here in Germany.
It's pretty awesome, right? So you have everything from trams, trains, what I mean, like regional trains, also from city to city trains. Well, I think that would be a regional train right there, right? So to buses, and even in Hamburg, right, you have ferries that can also take you to places. Yeah. So it's pretty good. So currently we pay for a one-way ticket, €2.90 in Dusseldorf, to go in a certain zone, and I think that's valid for 1.5 hours. Right. However, if I understand it correctly, you can only buy it once. So if you go one way, right, and it takes you 20 minutes to get there, you still need to buy another one to come back, because that ticket was just valid for that one way.
Okay. That's usually it. That's my experience as well. I think most cities like that. Yeah.
Yeah. However, the transportation company usually has like deals, right? Like you can either get like a tenner ticket, or there's even like in Dusseldorf, we have a happy hour that you can, after 6 p.m. you pay, I think, €4, and then you have from 6 p.m. till 6 a.m. the next day. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. With that ticket, you can take a combination of bus and tram, sometimes even regional train if it's like the distance is not so far. Yeah. So
Yeah, so that's public transportation, and it's, as you said, it's a very good option all over Germany, wherever you are, except for where I am. I'm living out rurally in a village, and there is no train station.
Oh, you don't even have a bus?
We have buses. We theoretically have buses. I very seldom see buses driving. We have bus stops. I've seen bus stops, but like not actually. Seen them. I think I've seen one mythical bus stopping at a bus stop here in our village once.
Wow. So, okay. So definitely for you, a car makes more sense. I guess, right?
We have to. Unfortunately, we have to have a car. It just doesn't work otherwise. Makes sense. But that's also one of the things about where you choose to live. Like if you're out rurally, you're probably gonna need a car.
Definitely.
And cars are expensive. I can tell you that they're expensive things, because you've got maintenance costs regularly. You've got to get them. Unlike in South Africa, where you can drive a car until it's pretty much dead.
No, here you have to pass the tooth, right?
Which is tooth. Yeah. And that also costs some money, and you got regular services. So having a car is a lot of money.
Plus the insurance, obviously.
And plus the insurance, which is something we're going to get to very soon. We're going to talk about insurances. But then there's other options that you mentioned, like renting a car for a weekend. That's something you guys do, right?
Yeah. So for us, it didn't make sense number-wise to have a car, because we live in a city that I mentioned. We use a bike, or we walk, or in some rare cases, we use public transportation. So to have a car for us would be like to have the car parked from Monday to Friday, and maybe only use it for the weekends. So we ran some numbers, and then renting a car is a lot cheaper. We have Europe Car. They have some deals for the weekend, so you can pick it up on Friday and return it on Monday, and it's for €50. Yeah. So that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, that's cool. And I know a lot of people who do that, and it makes a lot of sense, because then you have that flexibility of a car, but you're not paying huge amounts for it.
Yeah. And also sometimes we use this sharing, like a car, Share Now is now, which is also pretty nice. Sometimes when we need to go to Cologne, from Dusseldorf to Cologne, sometimes the train connection is not that good. So we can take how are these cars called? They're called shareable cars. Car sharing. So that's pretty cool. And now I think there used to be 2 car sharing companies, and now they're united. So if you open the car sharing app, at least here in Dusseldorf, there's like tons of options. So you can just pop in a car, drive somewhere, drop it off, and then come back.
Yeah. So and that's where the car is parked in the area or something like that. You just go and pick it up and then drive it around and then leave it somewhere.
Exactly. For that, though, however, you need a valid German license, I would say.
Yeah.
Like from Guatemala, I couldn't do that with a Guatemalan license, so I needed to take out my German driver's license to do such a thing.
Yeah. And the basic rate, what you said in your blog post, is about 19 cents per kilometer.
Per kilometer, yeah, which is pretty good.
That's very good. That is very good.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have e-scooters and bikes as well, which you can do. It's also like like the same concept where you just pick up an e-scooter and then pay for what you use. Yeah. And then, of course, taxi services, which I do not recommend this unless you're getting home from a club on a weekend night or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, we only take taxis. also taxis, but taxis when when it's really late and we really don't have any other public transportation option.
Yes.
Yeah. Although Uber was such a controversial thing here in Germany, it's very highly regulated.
Yeah.
Although they're still cheaper than a normal cab ride. Yeah, they're not very liked. But so far it has worked well. And at least in Dusseldorf, it doesn't work all the time. Yeah. Sometimes it does. But I prefer Taxi Now is the app that I use, which is okay.
Yeah. And in most cities, you start the taxi ride with a certain fee. So there's like a €3.50, I think you said. Yes. And I think it used to be €2.50 for a long time, but in the cities now that I've seen, it's also about €3.50. That's the base cost. And then it goes up per kilometers. And I think every kilometer costs about €2, I think you said as well.
Yes.
So that's correct. It can work out to be
expensive. Pretty expensive.
Yeah. Especially if you're going like 10 kilometers, then you can easily end up with over €20 if depending on how far you're going. So it's useful, but it's expensive.
Exactly. It would be as a luxury. We take it once every couple of months or so. Yeah.
But you guys, your transportation, you said, is mostly bicycles.
Yes, that is correct. We love our bikes. So when I first got here, I bought a bike at a flea market for, I think, like €30. That lasted for like 3 months, I think. Right. Because like it just broke down. Yeah. And then I went to a shop and I'm like, yo, how much do you charge to fix this? Oh, this will cost you €150. I mean, I paid €30 for the bike. Doesn't make sense. Because it was like so messed up, right? Yeah. So then I ended up actually buying a proper bike, and it has been like awesome. Like I love cycling everywhere because in Dusseldorf, it's a relatively small city. So within like in 20 minutes, you can really be anywhere. Yeah. And I've heard from friends in Berlin also that with a bike, it's actually sometimes even faster than public transportation. So biking, if you love biking, it's a very good option.
But you said that you do it even in winter. So even when it's frosty outside, you're riding bikes around. Okay.
Yeah. There's a German saying, and it's not like there is no bad weather. There's just bad clothing.
Yes. It's a very good saying, actually. I'm still not going to cycle in winter. I can tell you that right now. Even if
we have like the whole like space suit, you know.
So that is the transportation cost. So you guys, you invested in decent bicycles, and then you will have maintenance costs, but it's obviously a very cheap way of getting around, and also good for your health. So
exactly.
Another win-win situation.
Another win-win situation right there.
So the next thing that on your list is food costs. So we're talking about things. So tell me a bit about the supermarket situation in Germany.
Yeah. So I would say also food costs really depend on your diet, right? Like what kind of food do you eat? How often do you cook at home versus going out for dinner? These are all factors that are going to affect the costs. Yeah. So we love shopping at Aldi. Aldi is, I would say, a relatively cheap supermarket with very high quality standards, in my opinion. So we roughly, for both of us, we spend €400 for both of us. Yeah. We have a relatively easy diet. We don't do anything fancy. We don't eat a lot of meat. We eat a lot of vegetables. We're not vegetarians, but the most meat that we eat is chicken and sometimes fish. Okay. And for that. However, there are supermarkets like Edeka, which I would say are like the most expensive ones in Germany. This is a bit more of a luxurious kind of supermarket.
It is, yeah.
And you have the super cheap option like Netto, for example, which there you can really find very cheap alternatives to stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. And of course, the other option is something that you said you don't do too often is eating out as well. So, and that again depends on the city that you're in, because if you're in a bigger city, you can pay a lot more for a decent meal.
That is true. However, in Berlin, I think it's still relatively cheap to go out. I would say it could be even cheaper to go out for dinner in Berlin than it can be in Dusseldorf, for example.
Right. Wow.
Even though rent prices are higher in Berlin. Okay. But food has remained relatively cheap in Berlin still.
Yeah. I guess there's lots of competition.
Yeah, definitely. And tons of places, right?
And tons of places.
However, here in Dusseldorf, for example, I would say when we go out for dinner, I would say if you have like an appetizer, a main dish, and let's say 2 beers or 2 drinks, you're looking at paying €30 or €35 per person.
Yeah. I think that's in Nuremberg, I can say as well. When that's where I go out most if I'm going out to eat, and it's about the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the rest of the cities are pretty standard in going out for dinner. I think in big cities. How about in your village? Do you have a restaurant there?
We do. We have one burger place which I'm very excited about.
Ooh,
because
okay.
it's not a given in these little villages, and it's a very good burger place, and they have all kinds of food. But then there's 2 breweries in this little village, and they're competing breweries, so it's quite amazing. It's a small village, and then there's 2 breweries, and they both serve traditional German food, obviously. So it's our options are fairly limited when it comes to here. We have this American diner type place, and then there's 2 breweries, and then in the neighboring village there's an Italian place, and so on. So there's options around here, but it's not like there is in the city, and it's generally cheaper. Everything is that's one thing I will say about living rurally, is everything is generally cheaper. From rent is very good rurally, but then you've got other higher transport costs. Although I think living rurally is going to become more of an option if the trend towards working from home continues, because people don't have to worry about a long commute, and they don't have to worry about being in a specific city. They can just be out in the country. So this is, I've just switched to more of a remote working situation at work. So it's suited me just fine, because I don't have to get backwards and forwards that often.
Exactly.
Anymore. So
I would say our next plan for moving is definitely, we're looking into moving into a more rural area, because we usually go for walks during the day, and it's like, okay, if I go for a walk, I'd rather go out to a countryside, right? Than the tram going in front, the train passing by, cars honking,
kids on the sidewalk,
kids running everywhere, e-scooters here, bikes there,
It's much better to just get that feel of nature and walk through a forest.
Does that make us old though? Is that like what older people say?
I think it does.
Right. I just want the peace and quiet and the sound of the birds in the morning.
but it comes down to what you want again, and which phase of life you're in. Because if you're younger, like when we first moved to Germany, my wife and I were in our late 20s, and we still were going out to clubs. And we didn't have kids back then, and then it was wonderful to live in the city. Then it's great. And
exactly, it's what you want, right? Yeah, it's whatever you. Yeah, and again, your lifestyle. Yeah,
exactly. And now we just like you said, we far prefer a walk through the forest or through farmlands even, and it's just a whole different lifestyle.
Exactly. Yeah.
So something else that we don't have to go into too much detail on this, but in Germany, the bank costs that you...
Oh, yes. So that was actually very surprising to me. Yeah. Like I mentioned, it was a pain really to open my first bank account. And I was paying a yearly price for having a credit card, which in Germany, a credit card is not really a credit card, I would say, not in the traditional sense that you can spend money with it and then pay in installments. It's like you pay and then they charge all of it at the end of the month.
It all comes off the next month. Yeah.
It all comes off like
so
directly, in that month.
It's a credit card, but it's more of just like a debit card where you're prepaying for things, I guess.
Exactly, which is weird, right?
It's
Weird.
So it's so weird.
So I was paying for this, let's call it air quotes, credit card, a yearly price of like 100 euros. Yeah. And then I realized, why am I paying for this? So then I changed. And then actually in an expat dinner with some colleagues, some people started telling me about this like super cool online bank, fully in English, automated. You can do everything online. I'm like, what is this? This didn't exist before.
Yeah. I think that's N26 or whatever it's called, right?
Yeah, that is N26. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So then I checked N26 out, and then I opened my bank account on a Sunday from my couch. It was a breeze.
Bliss.
It was like so different.
Yeah.
Where were you like 8 years ago, right?
They've definitely simplified things. I haven't used them, but I've heard from people who have that it's definitely made a big difference. It's very popular with foreigners coming to Germany.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's so easy, really. Like I mentioned, if you really want to go and open a traditional bank, like with Commerzbank or these Staatsparkasse or these German banks, you first of all have to kind of be aware of their opening times because they're super weird. And it's just a pain. It's a lot of paperwork. And sometimes you need to pay for, like I mentioned, like credit cards or... I would say credit card is the one that they charge mainly for. Yeah. Or if you don't have a certain amount of money coming in a month, then they charge you for having the bank account. That's
right. There is something I can't. You're right. I remember something about that with us as well. We had an account that started costing us more money because
More money than
there was no movement. There was no, because I think it changes the definition of it. Then it's they call it a girokonto, which is basically a bank account that has salary coming in and your expenses going out every month. But the moment it's something else, I think then it's qualified as a savings account, and then you have to pay certain fees. So that's something to research if you're looking into banks. Yeah. And I think, you said you used to pay 25 euros, but then you canceled that credit card.
I was 25. I exaggerated. And the 100 euros, it was just in my mind. That's how traumatic it was.
Oh, I'm so traumatized. It was 100 euros. No, it was, according to at least according to your article, it was 25 euros.
My article is the truth. Like I said, I mentioned it's funny that we're talking about cost of living because I'm terrible with numbers, but what is in the article that I really did research and looked at my bank.
Yeah,
I really wrote the truth there.
Yeah. All right. So that's bank costs. The next is something that was also surprising to me when we moved here was the German taxes that you have to pay, because it's Germany taxes you a lot.
Yes. But then again, the counter argument is but don't they give you a lot?
Yeah, you get a lot for that. Like you can actually see where those taxes are going, basically.
Yeah. So pretty much you can pay taxes between 14% till 42% of your income. Yeah. And that includes Social Security. It goes to the pension fund as well.
Right.
If you are religious, then you also need to pay some taxes for that.
Yeah, that was a surprise to me as well. That I think it can be 9% of your income that you pay to church taxes. And if you don't pay those church taxes, you don't have access, if you're religious, of course. If you're Catholic, let's say, for example, and you don't pay the church taxes, you don't have access to things like baptisms or
or weddings
marriages,
at a church,
funerals, and so on. Like it's you don't have access to that, so you have to pay your taxes. That was amazing to me, because 9% is a lot of money
It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I would say 9% is more in the southern states, where you live, right? Because it's a more conservative and religious part of Germany. Other parts is 8% that you pay. I mean, it's not that much of a difference, right? Like 1% difference, but And very crazy, right? And
it's crazy. And important there to note is that you can opt out of that. So you need to, when you're setting up your taxes, you need to make sure that, of course, unless you're Catholic or you're Protestant, you want to pay those taxes. But if you're not, then you must make sure that you opt out of paying those taxes.
Yeah. Actually, it's not really opting out, but the Anmeldung, which is a registration, you just don't cross the fact that you are a religious person.
Yeah, correct.
And that is the opting out for them. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's a big, this whole taxes thing is a big thing that people need to take into account when they're planning a move to Germany, or if you're here and you're getting set up, is that you're going to get a salary, but you're only going to end up with about, depending on what you're earning, 60%. You could end up with only 60% of your salary, which is quite something. Yeah.
Which is quite something. If you think about it, 40% in taxes is a lot. Yeah,
it's huge. It's huge.
However, the counterpart, I don't know if it's for me, it's still okay, right? Because the remaining amount I only need to consider for rent, groceries, and other stuff. However, I know if I get sick or, I had a surgery recently as well, I paid 20 euros for that.
Yeah.
So on the other hand, you also have some benefits for it too.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So that is the taxes, and that there's a whole lot that we could discuss in taxes. We're not going to do it now.
We could talk
because that's
ages,
a podcast. Yeah. That is a podcast episode on its own. Yes. But you quoted a very cool site in your article. It's about TaxBack. I think it was called TaxBack or something like that. The website. Again, I'll put the links in the show notes. And the site is called Your bullshit-free guide to taxes in Germany. There's an article that you link to, and that was I had a look at that, and that is very comprehensive as well, and a good article about taxes. So go and check that out.
Definitely.
Then we'll just brush over education costs, because obviously this is not something that you guys don't have kids or anything like that, right? Or pets, you said.
That's correct. Yeah, we don't have kids or pets. Yeah.
Yeah. So. We can just talk about the averages that you mentioned in your article. So let me just have a look what you said. So for education, we're talking about daycare, and you're looking at they heavily subsidize daycare in Germany, and that's something else. Is having kids is very it's very good in Germany because they subsidize the kindergartens, and they give you something that's called Kindergeld every month. So for every kid that you have, every kid that you knock out,
you get money.
You get money. It's like the lottery. Like, of course, you do have a human life that you have to take care of for the next 20 years, but
right.
you get Kindergeld for it. Amazing.
But I have a question for you because from friends that have kids and everything, right? So what I've heard is that the government subsidizes a lot of the kitas, right? Like before the school. Yeah. However, it's very hard to get into a public kindergarten, so they end up going to a private one, which turns out to be very expensive because then you don't really get a lot of help from the government for that.
Yeah, I can see that being a problem, and I've never experienced that problem myself. I think because we lived in smaller cities. Würzburg was a city of about 100,000 people, if I'm not mistaken, which is not tiny, but it's also there was enough options for us to find a place in a kindergarten.
So that's perfect. Okay.
Yeah. And out here in the rural area, it's fine. There's enough kindergartens and people out here for us to get in. So that was
that's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. It's also one of the benefits of living rurally. But I can see, I think in a city like Munich or Berlin or somewhere like that, and possibly where you are as well.
Yeah, even Düsseldorf. Yeah,
it could be a problem because there's a lot of people vying for the same kindergartens. There's not enough, and I just heard a news report today that there's a shortage of, especially for children under 3 years old. There's a shortage of daycare for those kids as well in Germany. Yeah. So there is a shortage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, especially in the bigger cities. So it's another, like you said, another reason to be able to live in the countryside.
Yeah.
But so like from friends and my research also, like if you want to have this kind of like daycare for your kids under 3 years old, 3 years of age, then it could cost up to €1,000 a month.
That's the private daycare. That's right. And if you opt for the subsidized daycare, then it's about 100 to 200 euros a month per child.
Yeah. Which is quite a difference, isn't it?
It's huge. 100 euros versus 1,000 euros. And then for primary, secondary, high school, and university, there are no tuition fees, which is the other great thing about Germany, is the education is pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. You just have to pay for material and food pretty much, right?
Yeah. And similar thing with the universities. I think you do have fees, but they're nominal, basically.
Yeah, not compared to other countries, which is a crazy amount of money.
Yeah, which is incredible. I don't know how that happened, but it's a great system, I think, because it just allows so many people to have access to education, and maybe that explains why the Germans are mostly so educated and intelligent. Yeah. So that is the education costs. Then a big one as well is insurances. So
insurances.
Yeah, so there are many insurances in Germany, but there is one that almost every German has.
Yes, the personal liability insurance.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. When I first moved to Germany, as I was opening my bank account with my account manager for 45 minutes, she told me, by the way, you need this Haftpflichtversicherung. Mm-hmm. Chinese to me. And I was like, excuse me. And then she tried to explain why this was important, right? And I'm like, no, I don't need an insurance. So she pretty much said, like, imagine you're crossing the street, you don't see it's red, and then you cause a car accident. And then like people get hurt, people go to the hospital and they all sue you and you're pretty much poor. I'm like, well, why would I cross it didn't make sense to me, right? Yeah. So I just totally declined it. Then when I met my wife, and then I don't know, of course, like in a date, insurances came up, right? And then
you don't
have it was like a big deal. And then she's like, you have to have it. And then again, she gave me like all the argument, like, whoa, okay, just because I want to keep on seeing you, I'm gonna get it, right? Like
this seems to be working, so I'll get the Haftpflichtversicherung, okay?
I'll get it.
Settle down.
And then I realized, dude, actually it's super important, because if almost every German has it, then everyone thinks they have the ability to sue you. And if you don't have like this protection, you're pretty much screwed financially, right? Unless you're like a millionaire and you don't care, obviously. Yeah. So that's a very big one, which is not expensive. You can get Haftpflicht for even €3 a month. But it's not expensive.
Yeah, you can get pretty good coverage for, like you said, for a very little amount of money, but you have to have it, because as you said, everyone assumes that if you do it, like if you just, I think you also had the story of you dropped a friend's phone, right?
Yes, exactly. So pretty much like a month after I got the insurance, I was in a bar and I wanted to like surprise a friend. I'm like, hey, how you doing? And then he had his brand new iPhone in his hand. It fell. It smashed against like the bar. Like it was horrible. When he picked it up, like the whole screen was crashed and it couldn't turn on. It didn't work anymore.
So you really
freaked out.
Broke that thing.
I broke that. I don't know. Like it was just, and then I freaked out for like 5 minutes. I'm like, no, forget about it. I have an insurance now. You know what? My people will contact your people.
Yeah. And that's exactly the benefit.
Yeah. But then Apple took care of replacing the phone. So unfortunately I didn't use my insurance, but I had contacted them and they had already sent me the paperwork that I just need to fill out. And it was easy.
Yeah. So it is. We also kind of questioned it when we first got to Germany whether we should have Haftpflichtversicherung, but we soon realized when we spoke to just the few Germans that we knew that like you have to have it. So
you have to. Yeah.
Just go and get Haftpflichtversicherung, and like you said, it makes sense. If you cause an accident or if you do something stupid, you're covered. And especially if you've got kids. If you've got kids, they do stupid things. They're not the smartest, and then you're covered. Yeah, it's very important.
I had a story of also a friend who the dad was out jogging and then there was a dog owner and the leash, which it was like almost evening, right? So the leash was one of these transparent leashes, right. And the dog was like, let's say across the sidewalk, and my friend's dad didn't see the leash because it was invisible and he tripped and fell and then he broke his arm. Big thing. Here comes the lawsuit, right? Yeah. So something as simple, right, as that you could just be out there and then you just don't realize maybe you leave your bike or do something and someone trips and then
you're responsible.
There goes a lawsuit.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And we're covered for like something ridiculous. I think it was for 5 million euros worth of damage or something. I'm like, how am I going to do 5 million euros worth of damage?
You just don't question it. You're just grateful that you have it.
It's okay. Like, I don't want to know how it called 5 million. We'll get it. And then the other one was Hausratversicherung that you mentioned.
Yes. Also, so that's like home contents, right? Which pretty much insures your belongings. So when I was doing research, the analogy that is used very common is that let's take your house, like put it upside down, shake it, and whatever falls out of it is what is covered with this insurance.
Right.
A lot of these insurances, they also cover bikes. So we have our bikes are covered, which is good because my wife she locked the bike on a fake pole, and then it was stolen in a matter of like 10 minutes. Okay. And then we could have filed a claim that it was stolen, right? And then we got the money back and she was able to buy the same bike within a month, I would say. Yeah. So that one we have used it, definitely.
Yeah. And that was also something that we got right at the beginning as well. It's good to have.
You were fully integrated. You got all the insurances from the beginning. We didn't mess around.
We rather err on the side of safety. We're like, okay, let's just do this. And it hurts a bit like any insurance. It's like it hurts a bit to pay it, but it's good to have that peace of mind.
Yeah, because then something happens, which it could happen, right? And then you like you said, you have that peace of mind. Oh, okay, I can recover it or whatnot.
Exactly. And then also there's tons of other insurances depending on your living situation. You could have car insurance, which in the beginning is very expensive until you've had the insurance a few years and it comes down if you've got no claims. I do not know what I pay for car insurance. I wouldn't be able to tell you. So maybe I'll look it up and put it in the show notes.
Put it there.
And then also legal insurance might be a good thing to have. It's not, I wouldn't say it's necessary, but you never know when you're going to have to get a lawyer, and lawyers are very expensive. And if you've got legal insurance, it means you have the ability to pay for a lawyer if you ever need one.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing, like Germans love to threaten with lawyers, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that if you have legal insurance, you have that ability to also feel protected, right? Like, or if you have an annoying situation, just by saying, I'm going to tell my lawyers or I'm going to contact my lawyer. Oh, things just got resolved a lot faster.
Yeah, exactly. It's good to have that option. It's good. Do you have legal insurance?
Yes, we have legal insurance as well. Yeah. Dude, I'm married to a German. We have all kinds of insurances.
Yeah, we don't. I think that's something that we don't have. But we haven't needed it. Touch wood. Yeah. Now that I've said that, it's going to happen. But
no, please don't.
but I hope not. But there have been potential situations where we were thinking, is this going to result in a legal situation? Would it be good to know that we wouldn't need it? We would have it.
Yeah. So It's not that expensive. And the thing is that a lot of these legal insurances, they have a waiting period. So they're smart, right? Because they're like, oh, are you getting us just because you know trouble is coming?
That is something. We had a situation where we thought we might be needing it. And exactly like you said, we started looking around, but they said you have to, I think it was a 3-month waiting period or something like, I can't remember what it was, but there is a period where you have to, so it's good to have it already. Just have that in mind. It's not a necessity in Germany, but it is more of a peace of mind that should you run into legal situations.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's insurance. Again, that's also another podcast for another day.
Yes.
It's a big issue. It's a big topic.
If you ask an average German how many insurances they have, I would say an average 5.
Yeah, easily.
Which is good. Yeah, easily.
Okay, and then that brings us to, and of course it's difficult to put a price on the insurances that you have because it vastly depends on what you're insuring, how much you're insuring it for. So, but it's just good to keep in mind that's part of the cost of living in Germany.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. The personal liability insurance, I think it's a definitely a necessity. Home contents is more, like you said, peace of mind with legal as well.
Exactly. So then there's other costs. And now under other costs, you list things like cinema, for example.
Yes.
Which is quite a thing in Germany because it's expensive.
It is expensive. It is really expensive.
Yeah.
So here in Düsseldorf, I would say in Germany generally, I don't know why, but like finding original version of movies. So let's say if you want to watch a Hollywood movie and you want to watch the English version of that, it's very difficult to find a theater that actually has that.
So
and when you do, the, like at least in Düsseldorf, when these theaters had this like kind of like Hollywood movie, you would pay for 3D entrance because they would only put it in 3D. So that's like 15 euros just to go watch a movie. And if it's crappy, then that's it. You just spend 15 euros for spending 2 hours of your life in the crappy. And what is super annoying is that like animated movies, right? Like for kids generally, you're not going to find them in original version in Germany.
Yeah.
Because they're targeted for kids. And so they're 100% of the time just in German. Which is weird.
It is weird.
I mean,
it is weird. And it depends where you are. Like in Nuremberg, which is also the closest city that I have to watch movies, they have a cinema that shows English movies, but it's not that many cinemas dedicated to it. Like how can you call them? Separate kinos or kini or whatever they call them.
I know. Yeah.
So they have rooms. Yeah, they have multiple rooms where you can watch a movie, and there's only 1 or 2 that are dedicated. And if it's an IMAX, then there's one 3D theater that's running the original film. So they come on. You have a limited time to see that movie before it disappears, and the next English movie is being shown. And then sometimes you end up having to watch it at like 10:30 at night or something like that, starting the movie because they're running them so late because they're in English. It's like, it's so frustrating. I used to love cinema so much, and I've just given up on it since coming to Germany.
Me too. I'm on that same boat. Yeah. And what is also super funny is that even when you show up to an original version movie, it could be only you and your friends or the people that you're going with in the cinema because it's like empty, right? Like that's what I mean. It could explain because there's not so much, like it's not like the whole cinema gets filled. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So watching movies in the original language is definitely a challenge.
Yeah, that's right. And it's expensive. It can cost you, I think if you look at the entire evening with getting popcorn and drinks and so on, you can easily look at about 20 to 30 euros per person for the night. Easily. Probably easily more. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And then you mentioned gym membership.
Yes. So I would say gym is also quite pricey. And most of the gyms, they have a contract, right? It's not like you can just go there and it's like a monthly thing that you can cancel whenever. If you don't cancel the contract in time, you can get in trouble.
Yeah.
So the cheapest gym that I found was 15 euros a month.
Right.
However, you need to pay all like for the whole year. So it's 15 euros a month, but they charge the whole year in advance. So it's not
they know what we're gonna do. They know that we're gonna be amazing in the first few weeks of the new year, and then after 3 months,
you're not gonna go, right?
Yeah. So usually it's an annual membership, and then it automatically renews after that year.
Exactly. There is a cool concept that again just popped up a few years ago called urban sports, which is really cool because it works for all of Germany.
Okay.
And you have, let's say, like this membership, and they have collaborations with multiple gyms and swimming pool areas and climbing halls and all these places. And I think the cheapest option, I don't remember. I think, the cheapest option is 29 euros a month, and you have access to I think once a week you can go to one of these places. And the cool thing is that it's like all around Germany. So if you have it in Düsseldorf, and if I would travel to Berlin, I could go there, or Nuremberg, I could go there. And this one, depending, because they have different packages, and depending on the package, you could cancel monthly,
right?
If you want. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. But that's like brand new. I think it started like 2 years ago or something. But generally, gym is quite expensive. I have friends that have paid like 50 euros or 60 euros a month for the gym.
Yeah, that it can get pretty expensive. And then something else that you mentioned, kind of a necessity depending on your hair situation. I don't have that problem, but
you don't have that problem.
No, I
right?
just do it at home. I just like shave it off at home. But getting a haircut in Germany is something that you're going to need to factor into your costs.
Definitely. So I have short hair. So I pay 30 euros for a haircut, which is, I would say is quite expensive. I have guy friends, and they usually go to the cheaper places, and they sometimes pay 15 euros for their haircut.
Yeah. But even that, I like, even when I was going to the hairdresser regularly, I found I would pay between 15 and 20 euros for a haircut, and it was literally just a trim, like just trim. It is so expensive. It is so expensive here. Like,
it is quite expensive.
And surprisingly, this is one thing that rurally is not cheaper. In fact, it's more expensive. And I guess they know that you don't have many options to go.
So they take advantage of that, right?
It is so. I mean, it's a really nice hairdresser that we've got in our area, but it's like, it's not. It's actually more fancy than the kind of hairdresser that I would go to usually. So it was part of my decision to just keep my hair short, because I was like, this is ridiculous every 3 weeks, 4 weeks, just for a trim. No, sorry, people. But you mentioned here that it's about, you can expect to pay between 20 and 40 euros. And if you have short hair, about 15 to 30 euros.
Yeah.
And that's just a cut.
And that's just a cut. Well, they wash it and a cut. If you, that's also important to say, right? Because they will ask you if they should dry it for you or not. And usually if you say yes, then they're going to charge you more for that as well. Yeah. Exactly.
And then if you want to add things like coloring and that, then it just, the costs escalate. You can actually pay over 100 euros for coloring, haircut, dry, everything in the works. It could be pretty expensive.
It could be, yeah.
All right. So those are the most common things that add to the cost of living in Germany. Obviously, we could go, like we said, into some things in more detail, but you've covered it all very, very nicely with links to all kinds of resources. In fact, you've got, at the end of this article, you've got resources to help you calculate your expenses in Germany. There's calculators, there's lists of prices, all kinds of things. And then, of course, you've also got lists of things like best cities to live in Germany, simple 18-step guide on how to move to Germany. So that's all linked to in your blog article.
Yes.
So you said 1,000 euros to 2,000 euros is what you guys are paying for all of the things that we've just spoken to, right?
Yeah. So with the lifestyle that we talked about, that my wife and I have, our costs per month are 1,084 exactly. That's really to the cent.
Again, you are integrated. So I'm getting like mixed signals from you.
Half and half.
Yeah, you're half integrated and half really well integrated.
Which is relatively cheap, right?
Yeah,
but have we already talked? I've had friends who have a very nice apartment and they alone pay 1,200 or 1,500 euros just for rent.
Yeah, that is the big one.
Friends,
the rent is the big one. Yeah.
Yeah. Or I have friends that have kids and they love eating out. So obviously that is the biggest expense. Yeah. So in my household, rent is definitely the biggest chunk, which is the 570 euros, followed by the groceries, because like I mentioned, we rarely eat out. And then it's pretty much divided into insurances, mobile and internet. Right. And transportation almost null, because we go everywhere with the bike.
Yeah. So that's
I would say
what you can expect. Which leaves, I mean, if you're coming over as an expat, you're generally looking at jobs that would cover that pretty well,
Yeah.
I would think, right?
I would think so. So when I first moved here and I was single, I was earning roughly 1,500 net. So after tax deduction and stuff, and that was enough to live in a shared apartment. I was able to do some small travels and drink beer every once in a while.
Yeah.
So it was enough to cover my costs. However, I didn't have enough to save money monthly, for example.
Yeah. I think that's about accurate as well. I think when you first get there, Germany is expensive, especially if I compare it to South Africa. It's a way more expensive cost of living. But when you compare it to other countries, I think you even mentioned in your blog, countries like Switzerland, for example, which is hugely expensive.
Yeah, it's even more expensive. Yeah.
Germany is pretty well priced. You get decent salaries here, and the cost it's okay. The cost of living.
I would say it's okay. And also there's always options, right? You can go to you could also go to a super fancy brewery and have a beer there, or you could go to a kiosk and buy a beer for €1, or you could go to the supermarket and buy a beer for 60 cents.
It depends what you love. It depends if you want to go.
Exactly.
And if you go out every weekend to nightclubs, or, it depends what kind of lifestyle you lead. But the things that we've just spoken through are generally the baseline of what you can expect. And then you can add or subtract things depending on your lifestyle and what you're willing to compromise to that baseline.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You couldn't have said that better.
Well, this could have been a 30-second podcast.
That was it.
That's it. We're done. We're out. Jen, thank you so much for coming and spending so much time. It's ended up being a lot longer than I expected, but I think it's good information, and this is the kind of thing that I know people are looking to hear. So I really appreciate it. People can find your website that you are doing with your wife, simplegermany.com, which has, as I said, tons of resources. I guess you're still building on that all the time and adding new information, so people should go and check that out. I really appreciate you taking your time. It's been a fun chat.
It has, definitely. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Thank you for listening. It's so good to be back in your feeds. If you have any questions or you want to get in touch with me, info@thegermanyexperience.de. Just write to me there and get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. Music in this episode by my band 10 Cent Janes. Additional music by Ryan Anderson. Until the end, I'll speak to you next week. Auf Wiederhören.